Maseches Brachos Daf Lamed Ches. Gemara discusses the halacha Trema Mahu. What's the halacha of Trema? And Rashi says Trema is Kol Dover Hakotush Ktsas Ve'enoi Merusik Legamri. So you have a fruit, a date that's ground up, but it's not totally ground up. And the Gemara says you make a Bari Priya Eitz. The Trumas Hadeshen is Medayik from Rashi. The Rashi says Eine Merusik Legamri. It's not totally ground up. That if it would be totally ground up, then you make a shahakol niya b'dvaroi, and that's brought in the Ramah in Simon Reish Beis. The Mishnah Berurah brings the Machlokas HaPoskim. If it has to be merusik legamri ve'ene nikr tzurase klal, it's not nikr the tzura of the food at all to make a shakol. Or even if it is nikr a little bit, if it's merusik, you make a shakol. Ayin sham b'Mishnah Berurah. The Steipler asked the kasha on this Trumas Hadeshen, that if the Trumas Hadeshen is saying that since it is totally ground up, you make a shahakol niya b'dvaroi. He asked, the Gemara says that if you have dvash tamarim, you have honey that comes out of tamarim, the halacha is you make a shakol niya b'dvaroi because it's zeya ba'alma, it's only a sweat of the fruit, it's not the actual fruit. So the Steipler asked, why do you need that reason? Because it's zeya ba'alma. According to Trumas Hadeshen, if something's ground up, so it doesn't have any form of the original fruit, you make a shahakol. So dvash, also a liquid that came out of the fruit, should be the same thing. And why do you need a new reason of zeya ba'alma? On that, the Steipler says that there's a tremendous difference. That if you grind something up, so there's a shinui, it's nishtana, the fruit, so therefore it changes the status of fruit, you make a shakol. However, when you have dvash or other liquid that comes out of a fruit, there's a mandama holds mifkid pocket, that means the liquid was inside the original fruit and came out, so that's not considered a change in the fruit. Since it's not a change in the fruit, it would be the halacha you make a Bari Priya Eitz, if not for the fact that it's zeya ba'alma. Then the Steipler asks another kasha that the Gemara says further, that maya, the silka, something similar to a vegetable soup. They have the maya, the water that got the flavor from the vegetables. The Gemara says you make the bracha of the Priya Adama, like the fruit. The L'chayr, according to Trumas Hadeshen, the same way something ground up, you make a shakal niya b'dvaroi, maya, the silka should be the same thing. On that, the Steipler says, and that's some tzvur in the Trumas Hadeshen, that it's different because over there you have besamim that were made to grind up. Since it's made to grind up, such a situation, even if it's totally merusik, since that's what it's made for, it retains its original bracha, and so huadin ma'ida silki, since it's made for that, that's what it's used for, you make a Bari Priya Adama. The Tila David says a different teretz. Tila David says that since over there the actual fruit is still intact, that you have to make a Bari Priya Adama, so Gidin Hapri, Kach Din Hamaya, the Osimine also has a din of Bari Priya Adama. There's a very interesting halacha in the Ma'aseh Nisim, that the Haggadah of the Nesivos HaMishpat, that he says an interesting halacha which comes from our Gemara. He says that if you have horseradish that's ground up totally, the halacha is you cannot be yoitza mitzvahs mara with horseradish ground up. And the raya is from our Gemara. The Gemara says Amud Beis. The Gemara has a question. If shlokos, that means vegetables that are cooked, if b'milsayu kaimi or not b'milsayu kaimi, do they retain the original halachas of bracha of the original fruit? And the Gemara is mevor that if shlokos lav b'milsayu kaimi, they consider changed when they're cooked, so you won't be able to be yaitza the mitzvahs achilas maror with the cooked maror. So the Nesivos says the same way in regard to shlokos, that was changed the status of the pri, you can't be yaitza mitzvahs maror. So the same thing, if you have a horseradish that's totally ground up, it loses the status of the pri, you can't be yaitza mitzvahs achilas maror. Rav Parler has a beautiful shtickle in his sefer on this Nesivos. And he says, you have to understand, there's a toisis on the Lamed Zayin Amid Aleph, that has a discussion on the halacha of koisis as hachita. That means you take a kernel of wheat and you eat it whole. So halacha is you make a bar priadama. Toisis has a suffix if the bracha afterwards you make a ala michya or you don't make ala michya. And Toisis says since he's not sure about it, it's better to only eat these kernels of wheat only in middle of a suda. The Shulchan Aruch brings this halacha, and further on in Sif Hey, the Shulchan Aruch brings what happens if you eat kemach, flour of wheat, and that the Shulchan Aruch says you make a bar nefashos. So the Rikvega says you see clearly from this mechaber that this suffix of Toisis is only talking about when you have chitim, if you have kernels of wheat, but if you have flour, you definitely don't make ala michya. So Reb Kveger explains that there's a difference because kaisis achita, you make a bar priadama, it still retains this pre to an extent, and therefore you make a bar priadama. So therefore afterwards you can make ala michya. However, when you grind up flour, that the bracha rishon is shahakol, so the bracha afterwards is a bar nefashos because it loses the status of a pre totally. Kvega brings down that the Rashba says not like that. The Rashba says the same halacha by koisis achita will pertain to kemach, and by kemach also could be you make a al hamichya. So Kvega brings a raya from the fact that the Gemara says weiter zayis meliach. You have a salted olive that you make if it's shlokos lav b'mulsayu koi, you make a shakol uborin nefashos. So you see that there's a raya to the shita of Toisus that on something that you make the bracha rishon is shahakol, you make afterwards a borin nefashos. Rav Pali asks the kasha on the Rashba. He says he doesn't understand what's the pshat in the Rashba. The Rashba says that even though on kemach you make a shakel niya b'dvara, you have ground up wheat, you make a shakel niya b'dvara, the bracha afterwards it could be is me'ein sholish, is ala michya. He asks, what's the difference? If the wheat is changed from its status for bracha rishayna, so it should be changed for bracha achrayna as well. What's the difference between bracha rishayna and bracha achrayna? So he says that you see from here that it's choluk be'ikki yisoidam, the bracha rishayna and bracha achrayna. Bracha rishayna you make on a pre ha'etz, on the shivas aminim, the pre of shivas aminim make a bar pri ha'etz. How much it's merusik, you lose the shame pre, and therefore you make a shahakal. However, the bracha of ala michya is not going in the pre. As long as you have a meichel from the shivas aminim of the chamishas aminei dagan, you make ala michya. You just need a meichel. You don't need a teres pre. So therefore, even though it's merusik, you make a ala michya. The Rav Pali asks a kasha. It's still shver the Rashba because the Gemara is mavur that zayis meliach. If you have a salted olive, the halacha is you make a betchila shahakol, and afterwards you make a bori nefashos. So if it's true what he's learning in the Rashba, that for a bracha achrayna you don't need a pre. All you need is a meichel of chameshas haminim. So hu adin a zayis meliach is a meichel of chameshas haminim. You should have to make a me'ein gemel afterwards. Why do you make a bari nefashos afterwards? So if Pali answers this kasha on the Rashba that why is it different that zayis meliach you make a bari nefashos? Why is it different than kemach? He says that by shlokis you changed it to a different min. That you made the vegetables into something cooked, it became something else. It's not anymore the original vegetable. However, when you have a ground up kernel of wheat, you didn't make it a different min. You just took away the shem pri. Since you ground it up, it loses the shem pri. But since it's still the original min, you can make afterwards a al hamichya. So he says, you see from here that there's a tremendous difference between if you cook something which loses the shem min, it becomes a different item, which is a raya from the fact that you can't be yotzi day mora, and if you ground something up. So you ground something up, still retains the original min, just loses a din pri. So therefore, the gabe, the chiddush of the Nesivis says that you cannot be yoitza mitzvahs mora with ground up horseradish. So he says l'chayr it's very different from shlokis. By shlokis, it's mavur that it becomes a different min. If it becomes a different min, so that's why you can't be yotzim mar. However, if it's ground up, it's the same min, loses its shem pri. So since it just loses its shem pri, but since it's the min that you could be yotzim mar, so you'd be able to be yotzim mar. Then he continues, maybe you don't need the din pri b'chlal for achilas morar v'ayin sham.